Hey everyone, so for this video, I just kind of want to walk through a few notes about displacement maps and normal maps based on a few issues that we had come up during class and also just in general. Specifically, some Mudbox stuff and also some Arnold stuff, since my other video was mostly just about RenderMan, but some of this is also just about Mudbox regardless of what renderer you're using. Okay, so the first thing is, so here is what my render looks like. I just did a render of this, and I have a displacement map and also a normal map. The normal map's just there to kind of enhance the displacement map, but the displacement map's giving me this kind of nice stuff at the top here and all these little bumps. I didn't really make a custom color map or anything yet, so my shader right now is basically I just have the subsurface here turned up to 1. I played with the specular roughness a little bit, and I played with the subsurface color and the color radius and the scale and stuff. This is all just based off of stuff that I looked at on the Arnold help docs, specifically under the subsurface category. But anyway, so I don't have an actual texture map or anything in here, but I do have in the bump mapping area, I have my normal map, and that is set to tangent space normals here. So one thing about the normal map that I'll just point out while I'm looking at it already is that for Arnold, you have to uncheck this flip R and flip G channel in addition to just changing it to tangent space normals. And that's because it has something to do with how the Arnold is interpreting the color of your map. Now here's a thing, apparently you should also turn your color space to raw for the normal map, even if you're just using like a PNG or whatever as your normal map, then you want to be putting it in raw space, because otherwise it'll come out looking weird. And actually, I'm going to pause this for a second and then render it with that set back to sRGB. So let me just pause this. All right, so that was a few minutes for me, nothing for you guys. So here's what I did. So here's the correct looking render, and then just for comparison, troubleshooting purposes, this screenshot or this snapshot here is what it looks like if I have the color space set to sRGB. So you want to change that to raw, and then this is what it looks like if this is in sRGB, and also you forgot to check on both of these things. So you want both of these to be, well, let me just make sure I'm doing this right here. So yeah, so you want to have these unchecked. You don't need to have Arnold trying to flip them around. It will look wrong. And you do want to have this set to raw, and that should give you nice looking normal maps in addition to the displacement map. But of course, you don't have to use a displacement and normal for everything. There are many cases where you will just use a normal map, or potentially also could just be using a displacement map as well. All right, so on to question or issue number 2 here. So one thing that was happening during class was that when I was in Mudbox, we were commenting on how the scale is really weird, and I did check, and I figured out over if we go to the preferences in Mudbox, the units are set to centimeters. It's just that for some reason Mudbox isn't interpreting files correctly, and this I found people asking about this online, and that was the general consensus. So what I did to create this current sculpt of my orange that I have here is I'm just right clicking and I selected the model, and then I went down to the scale tool in the select/move tools, and I scaled this, and I just kind of typed this up to 25 25, and 25. And that made it so that whenever I'm using my different sculpting brushes, I didn't have to make the values like 0.1 strength or something like that. I could just make them something more reasonable. Now, what was happening in class was that I exported my displacement maps with the object still at the scale of 25 in Mudbox. And what I've discovered is that you need to set, if you do scale up your object in Mudbox, you need to set the scale back to the original size of 1 before you extract your texture maps. So before you do this, and of course before you send it back to Maya at its base level. So that's just something you're going to have to force yourself to remember. And I'll give you an example of what happens if you export your displacement maps out at the wrong size. So I'm going to pause this again, and this will just flash onto what I'm about to show you. Okay, we're back in Maya again. So here, obviously this is the correct one, and then this is what happens if I export the displacement map out without sending my orange back to its regular scale. So clearly this is not remotely correct, because what it's trying to do is basically use the displacement map to bring this orange all the way back to size 25 scale, which isn't going to work because even the displacement map is not that powerful. So that I intentionally exported out that map with my object scaled in Mudbox up to 25 or whatever, and just to show you what it looks like, although I don't want to keep bringing it up on screen because honestly it's slightly disturbing me. So I don't want to look at that. Now, just as a reminder, first of all, you probably want to be using your hypershade for a lot of this stuff, because you're not going to be able to keep track of all the crap that's going on if you're just trying to work out of the attribute editor. But yeah, so with your displacement map, a few things. Make sure this should be in RAW automatically if you bring it in as a 32-bit TIFF or EXR. So you shouldn't have to worry about that too much. Apparently, you do have to turn on alpha is luminance for this. And in your displacement shader, so this is going into the displacement value here, which is going into the Arnold surface shader group. This displacement shader, which this is actually just a Maya thing, so it's just the regular built-in Maya displacement node, because Arnold doesn't have its own apparently, at least not that I could find. Now I could try changing the scale of this. So if this is still the huge map, which you can see right here, I named it the huge one on purpose. If I try to change the scale to like 0.1, I could see if my map's going to go back to a more reasonable size. And we can already see, so this is still the ugly one. It does look a little bit better, but this is still not 100% correct. It's still a little bit bigger than what it was supposed to look like. So you could try changing the scale, and that also applies for if your object is too small. So you could have the opposite problem happen where you export out your displacement map, and then your displacement map is at too small of a scale. So you do have the option to try and tweak your map in Maya, but it's probably better just to try and re-extract it from Mudbox again. You can save your operation, so you don't. This is normal map. You can save your operation, so you don't have to keep doing it over and over again. So it's not too difficult to just re-extract it again. So if I kept playing with the scale, I might be able to make this map salvageable. But honestly, it's just easier to re-export it out again at the right size. So hopefully that helps with anybody who is having displacement map issues. Ooh, my oven is going off. All right, so that's pretty much all that's supposed to be in this video. Just real quick, I'm going to bring up my hypershade so that there's a full screen of it, and if anybody needs to like pause the video and just come back and look at this. So again, remember, a displacement map gets its own thing, goes into the shader group, not into the actual shader itself, and the normal map or bump map will still go into the regular shader. So there's just a frame for you to look back at there. And all right, that's pretty much it. See you guys later.